You guys are so punctual. It's wonderful. Usually you have people joining 10 minutes late, not early. That's wonderful. Thank you. And we'll just wait for a few more people to join. For those of us that just hopped in, we're just gonna give it a few more minutes here. But if you have any questions or anything you want to start, feel free to drop it in the chat. And to any of you that are already here, do you own an iDRY? Anyone current iDRY user? Or just curious? Jim, on your end, do you have?
Yeah, you want me to? Sure, Colin.
There we go.
Actually, can y'all hear me now?
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so Colin, do you own a iDRY, or are you curious about finding out more?
Just curious.
Great.
Where are you, Colin?
Down here in Richmond, Virginia.
Yep. I almost moved there a few years ago.
Yeah. Good place to live.
We've spoken it before, Colin. I'm sorry if I don't remember it.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I called you randomly one day, probably a month or so ago.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for showing up to the session tonight.
Yeah, no worries.
Remind me, are you a sawmill guy or a wood products guy, furniture guy, or both? Or
yeah, a little bit of everything. Side hobby stuff. I've got a wood miser. Been running that for a few years. Got too much wood piled up.
Yep. What are we gonna do with it?
Run through Kiln, sell it.
Exactly. Pretty simple, actually. You almost don't need a whole webinar just for that.
See, all right, Jeff Nagel and Joseph Tragot have joined us. You guys can, if you have any questions before we get started, I'm going to give it just a minute or so here more for everyone else to log on. Feel free to jump into the chat, either in the chat box there, or you can go ahead and just unmute yourself or raise your hand. But if everyone wants to, where y'all from, drop that in the chat. That would be great. See who we have here. I'm down here in Asheville, North Carolina. So hot. Ooh, Indianapolis. Cool. All right, Jim, did you want to go ahead and get started? You want to wait a few more minutes?
Yeah, we'll get started and let people trickle in. So first of all, thanks to Jessica and her team for organizing this tonight. And thanks to everybody for taking some time to talk and listen about drying wood. And thanks to your families for letting you take the time at 5 o'clock at night to listen and talk about drying wood. We're gonna focus tonight on kind of a section or a certain product line of ours oriented a little bit more towards dimensional lumber, and so therefore maybe more 4/4 dimensional hardwoods for flooring, cabinet stock, certainly furniture and so on, and discuss some of the benefits for a wood products company, somebody who's a woodworker, maybe medium or larger size wood product manufacturing company, some of the benefits of why you might want to dry your own wood. So that's somewhat the focus of this presentation tonight, but definitely if you're a Wood-Mizer sawmill owner, you're only thinking about wanting to dry slabs, we can certainly talk about those things too. They're popular topics for us, and we'll go through some of the products that really all of our products apply to that part of the industry too. But I am going to focus a little bit more on some fine woodworking dimensional lumber advantages, and it's going to be pretty simple. We'll talk about us and our product line and the benefits of each of the different machines, kind of our customer base and drying services, and then some of the flatness characteristics for drying in certain machines of ours. So we'll kind of get right into it. So my name is Jim Parker. Some of you may have talked to me before, or some of you may even have kilns or your customers already. But I started this business several years ago. I was sort of born into the vacuum drying lumber business. My dad had a business called Vacutherm a long time ago, drying wood and selling and building some kilns. So I had kind of an odd, well, not odd, but I had an interesting childhood growing up in this vacuum drying thing, and it's pretty much all I've known. I love it, and we've grown the business quite a bit. I'm sitting in my office in Barrie, Vermont, in our factory. So we have a pretty large factory here in Barrie. We build all of our machines from scratch here, which means fabricating especially these vacuum chambers, stainless steel vacuum chambers here, which is a big job. And then building all of our own control panels, writing all of our own software. So basically raw materials in one end of our building and finished wood products out the other end. We have all of our engineering in-house, and we have a great team of people here. So we sell 100 to 150 kilns a year. So our base of customers is growing pretty quick, but there is, as probably a lot of you know, a huge shortage of drying, especially smaller, high-performing kilns for drying lumber coming off of Wood-Mizer sawmills or smaller, medium-sized mills. Basically, the industry was focused on only concentration yards, meaning drying operations that brought in lumber from 30, 40, 50 different sawmills and concentrated it into one yard, and then dried that through big conventional kilns, and then brokered it or sold it, made it available to the woodworking industry. It was has been very centralized for decades. And Wood-Mizer certainly helped to decentralize that, giving access to affordable, small portable mills. But the part of the equation that's been really lacking is what to do with all this wood that we're cutting and stacking up and stickering. If it's going inside a house, it needs to be dried, it needs to be heat treated, disinfected, and so on. And we need to be able to dry it efficiently with a machine that we can afford. So iDRY was really born to try and cater to that market. However, we have a history of providing drying solutions to really large furniture companies, flooring companies, millwork, and cabinet shops, some of the really the biggest in the world. And so we've developed large, high producing, efficient vacuum kilns for that industry. And we've learned a lot from that. And there are a lot of serious quality benefits that are small in a way, small and sort of in a fraction of a dimension kind of way, but huge when you look at a business that is moving, say, 1 million or more board feet through their production a year. It adds up fast. And so we're going to talk a little bit specifically about our machinery, and then why some of these big cabinet furniture maker type businesses who could afford to buy kilns on some level went that way rather than trying to just buy it kiln dried, and how maybe the smaller or medium size millwork cabinet furniture shops might start to take advantage of the same benefits. So we're saying here cutting out the middleman, but actually drying is, I kind of look at kiln drying as the hot potato. You've got the sawmills on one side, you've got the wood product manufacturer on the other side. Sometimes those are the same people. It sounds like Collins both, but a lot of times they're not, especially when it's a medium size or bigger operation. And so who gets to dry the wood is always the question. Does the sawmill buy the kiln and dry the wood and then get that value added, but then the wood products guy has to pay more for that wood because it's had that value added to it? Or does the wood products guy buy the kiln and now he can buy green lumber from any number of sawmills, because most sawmills don't have access to kilns? And that's really what we're focusing on tonight. It's not to say that you couldn't look at it both ways. We probably sell more to sawmill owners than to wood businesses that don't have sawmills. But in this case, that's what we're kind of focusing on tonight. And so the question is, if I'm a furniture shop, a cabinet shop, a flooring millwork shop, and I've got packs of dry lumber coming through my building all the time, I've got people on planers and molders and sanders and rip saws and all this stuff, why do I want to go through the trouble of getting a kiln to then source green lumber and bring it in and dry it to put it through my production? Why do I want to add that level of complication? If you want to think about it this way, you could say, why do I want to vertically integrate my manufacturing business a little bit more and add that part of the supply chain to my business? Well, there's some real serious advantages. And these are the reasons why some of the best and biggest wood products manufacturing companies in the world have gone that direction. The first one is definitely the immediate reduction of material costs, right? You can generally buy green dimensional hardwoods for almost half what it costs for a KD product. Now sometimes it's a quarter of the cost, sometimes it's 30%, it's across the board, but generally the cost to buy green material is roughly half of what it costs to buy dry material. And that's just one piece of the equation, because it's also the ability to buy what you want in terms of dimension, length, width, thickness, grade, quality, and so on. By buying green, you generally have a much larger selection, and you can go right to a sawmill and say, this is what I want. Can you take that log and turn it into this? Because that would really optimize my downstream manufacturing processes. And so that control over quality of incoming material is huge. And then another one would be access to more suppliers. You might know 1, 2, or 10 lumber brokers or dry lumber wholesalers that you can buy wood from, But boy, if you drew a circle around your facility 150 miles, you'd probably have 100 sawmills of various sizes. And so your access to supply and the redundancy that comes with having multiple vendors for your most important raw material is exponential. And so there's some real serious opportunities there, and that's a good reason to want to dry your own wood. And then one of, not maybe the last one, but another would be controlling your inventory. So if you have a high production furniture plant, for instance, and you have a product line that you produce regularly, well, I know I need this dimension of this species and this grade. And so you buy that ahead and you have to store it in dry storage. So it's expensive real estate, and keep it dry and acclimated, and then pull from that. And then you have to buy ahead enough of that so that it's not a bottleneck. You can't run out of raw material in your production plant. But then if the tastes and preferences change on the buyer of the furniture side, they want walnut instead of cherry, or cherry instead of walnut. Well, if I have a huge warehouse full of walnut and everybody wants cherry tables now, what do I do with all this walnut? And so moving towards a just-in-time inventory process is really, really interesting. But what's prevented a lot of people from doing it in the past is you didn't have a kiln that was efficient and fast enough to make that work. It was just kind of changing the problem before. If I put up a 50,000 board foot conventional kiln, now I have to buy 50,000 board feet of green lumber, and I have to wait months for that 50,000 board feet of green lumber to be dry, and then I have to store it. And so it never really solved the problem for these people. But if we have a small batch, fast drying machine that does a really quality job, now we can look just a little bit less far out in our demand, our production, and say, this is what I think people want in my product. And that's the supplier I can get that raw material from. I'll buy it now, I'll dry it tomorrow, and next week we'll be able to put it into making that product. So it's a real game changer for these businesses, and not just for people who didn't have lumber drying, but for some of the big companies we've dealt with in the past who did have huge conventional kilns and lots of drying capacity. They're finding these same benefits. One of specifically to millwork and especially cabinet shops where we're using a lot of 4/4 lumber, and say a lot of hard maple, certainly a lot of poplar. We have a huge benefit in our technology to keep this lumber flat. And by keeping, not just reducing end checking and splitting and other drying degrades, and even not talking about quality benefits in the color, but just in keeping a board ridiculously flat, there are enormous benefits. So we're talking now specifically about our turbo line of products, which is the iDRY Turbo Mini, which is our new machine we'll talk about in a minute. The Turbo, which is like a 6,000 board foot machine, and then our Pro, which we actually have one about to ship out here. It's a 15,000 board foot, the biggest vacuum kiln we've ever built. And these are heating plate style machines with a rubber bladder press that puts a tremendous amount of weight down on a pile and distributes that weight across these hot water heating plates. So we get really even pressure down on wood while it dries. And if you do the math, 13 PSI is about the pressure we push down with, times the length and width of this plate. There's a lot of eyes, there's a lot of inches. And so we're, even our little machine, that's a total of 125,000 pounds, or in the big machine, 400,000 pounds of weight. Imagine something that weighs 400,000 pounds, like maybe my house, maybe a couple of houses, sitting on top of the pile of wood, and not just distributing that weight wherever there's a sticker, but on all the square inches of the board. we get really, really flat lumber. And what this means for people is they can take a board and put it sometimes right into the molder, or right once to the rip saw, cross cut into the mold, basically skipping a dry planing part of the production. And this is a huge throughput improvement, meaning that we can now move that pile of wood through our production line into our finished product faster, because we're literally skipping over entire aspects of our production, our manufacturing, our whittling this wood down into a component that's made into something. But because there's no cup, we don't have to take a board like you see in this picture is a perfect example of this wide board that in any other kiln would have cupped at least a little bit. And if I have a 4/4 board or 1.125" thick board, and I can't make something out of something that's got a crown in it. The only way I can make it flat again, if it's that wide of a board, is to rip it into a bunch of little boards and then plane them. If it's a narrower board, of course, you can put that to the planer. I'm still going to lose an 1/8 or even a 3/8, who knows how much wood out of the planer to get that back to a flat piece of lumber. But I have to get it flat before it goes through a molder. And so if we can have this wide board that is already flat, it gives us so many more things to do with this board. Maybe we don't have to do anything. Maybe I'm making paneling and that's all set, it's done. I can almost my entire panel for my door at that width, and I can just get it right through my process. So there's a throughput advantage. But obviously, if I can use more of that board because I don't put it all down on the floor up into my dust collection as sawdust or wood chips, then I get way more wood out of that same pile of wood, like 30% or more wood out of that pile of wood, which is huge because that's 30% less wood that I have to buy to make the same amount of product. And so you're getting a 30% savings on your raw material. Wouldn't that be nice? It's huge. And so we start to then rethink the whole supply chain and the whole lumber purchasing and everything, because if I don't need you, sawmill guy or hardwood dry lumber broker guy, if I don't need an 1.125" or even a plump 4/4, like almost 1.25" board to make a 7/8 or 3/4 inch product and put all that on the, up into the dust collection, then, and I have my kiln, so I'm now buying green direct from the sawmill. Can I now ask the sawmill guy, hey, I don't want to buy all this extra wood from you because I'm just going to chip it or whatever, turn it into dust. Can I just buy 1 inch nominal thickness, be accounting for some shrinkage and drying? So now we're down to 7/8, and then we put it through a molder and now we're down to 3/4. But think of all the lumber I've just saved. And if I have a good, honest sawmill guy I'm buying from, he's charging me per board foot and it's graded properly, and I'm not paying for that extra 1/4 inch of wood that I didn't buy. So we have a huge paradigm shift in the whole supply chain. It's almost too much of a shift. This is something that's going to take a long time, but it's just starting to happen as our technology gets into these plants. But going in a big company, going to your 30 or 40 sawmill suppliers and asking them to totally turn on its head the way they make lumber for you is a big deal. So this is not as easy as I'm making it sound, but it is really, truly a benefit and really exciting. So if we can save wood for these wood products companies, now that could be the wood products company saving it for themselves, or for you sawmill guys out there and you're trying to think about, should I add a kiln? And you're trying to sell the benefits to this wood you're drying in this kiln to your customers, which might be millwork, cabinet, flooring shops, furniture shops. These are just sales points. Hey, you're going to be able to use a lot more of the wood that I sell you because my wood is going to come to you flat, minimal to no degrade, really good color quality. And I'm buying good logs and I know how to use my sawmill. So all of that combined gives you a serious competitive advantage. Now, we realize that not everybody's gonna in the market for a kiln, never gonna buy a kiln. That's just not for them, which is totally fine. Because we're selling hundreds of kilns, we have hundreds of kilns out there in the world, more and more every single day, that want to dry wood for you. So if you're a sawmill and you really want to access that KD market, that dry lumber market, and sell direct to a furniture company, well, you can go on our website, go to our network of kilns page and look at the map and find somebody next to you. I'm sure there's somebody within some number of miles. And if they're not booked out 6 months to a year, like a lot of people are, then you have a drying, you can get into the drying business without committing to the cost of an entire kiln. If you're a furniture company and you desperately need better raw material and you're not getting it the way you want it, reach out to our customers. They can either sell you that material or they can mill it for you and dry it for you. So there's a whole network of our kilns out there that's growing rapidly. That is a really good starting point for folks. And before you even buy a kiln, I encourage you to go pay a customer to dry wood for you. So and I kind of already outlined all these benefits, but 9 times out of 10, a customer that or prospect who dries with a customer eventually becomes a customer, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they find a relationship with one of our customers that lasts for 10 years, and that's really great. We can, on our website, you can also get a quote on drying services. Our customers have various ways of charging. Generally, it's per board foot per day of drying. So if it takes fewer days, it costs less, and so on. Some have a flat rate. Generally, drying in our kilns is, or paying somebody to dry in our kilns is more expensive, not because it costs more. The kiln's actually extremely efficient and inexpensive to operate, but there's extreme high demand right now for drying in our kilns. So expect that it might be a little bit more than you're used to paying for a conventional custom drying operation, but the quality is going to be on a different level. So we accomplish all of this with several different types of kilns. The first kiln we came out with is our smallest kiln, which is the iDRY standard. And I wouldn't call it an entry-level kiln. It's just simply smaller. It has all of the capabilities of the larger kilns, the touchscreen and PLC controls, all the best components, stainless steel chamber, and so on. It's just simply smaller. They're 208 single phase power, so anybody can plug them in anywhere. And that's really all you need to do. There's no boiler required, so really easy setup. And I'd say for the volume that they dry per month or year, probably one of the most affordable kilns out there. The next size up is the same technology. So these are both stickered piles of lumber that go into these kilns, just like any traditional conventional type kiln. We have, although it's under vacuum continuously, we do have heated air flowing around, which is a really efficient way to do it and simple. This iDRY Plus is just a bigger version of the iDRY standard. It's about twice the capacity, 4 feet longer, a foot wider, and a really popular machine because it's twice the volume, but not twice the price. So we sell probably the most of this kiln. Most people who buy the standard eventually find that it's immediately filled up with other people's wood and they still want to dry their own wood. And that kiln typically is what finances the second kiln. And a lot of times that's a plus, sometimes another standard. The next kind of jump is into this turbo category that I talked about before, which is really the technology that I'm talking about when I'm describing this extreme flatness benefit. And that's what we're really focusing on today. The iDRY Turbo is was the first of this style kiln that we've built in recent years. And it's a maximum 6,000 board foot capacity. So really what that means is probably somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000, depending on what dimension and how well you pack it, so on. But this is a pretty good size plate dryer, and you're drying 4/4 maple from green, for instance, in 4 days. And so the throughput is pretty high. This style kiln is twice as fast generally as the other two. But it's more expensive. It's not only bigger, but you have the cost of these aluminum plates that go in between each layer, the cost of a bladder, some more handling equipment. So it's a more complex, more expensive machine. It's still just as easy to operate. All of our kilns are color touchscreen control with a start and stop button. There's no drying schedules. There's no previous experience required. They're ridiculously easy to set up and really easy to operate. This is also just plug and play, believe it or not. Besides setting up the plates and the track, getting that squared away, you're basically plugging in the power. But this kiln requires 483 phase. So we're into industrial voltages, and we're typically selling these to a medium-sized sawmill or bigger, or kind of a medium-sized woodworking company or bigger. The newest addition to that product line is the iDRY Turbo Mini, which, as we continue to copy all of Apple's branding, we have introduced a smaller version of what we put out there for that plate dryer. And it's the same technology, performs the same way. It's simply smaller. It's a little bit more simplified, and we are able to get the cost relatively down on it compared to the other kiln. But still, it's more expensive than the iDRY. Capacity-wise, it's somewhere between an iDRY Standard and iDRY Plus, but because it dries twice as fast as both of those, your overall annual throughput through this little plate dryer is more than both the Standard and the Plus. And of course, this has the benefit of the bladder press, whereas the other two do not. And so we're putting all this weight on the wood, 125,000 pounds of weight in the case of the Mini, and flattening boards that used to be twisted or preventing them from twisting. So this is the sort of the intro, the smaller to medium-sized furniture business, cabinet millwork shop, or sawmill that wants to supply those folks with extremely flat lumber. This is for you. We have had a lot of people asking for this machine over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's just taken us some time to find a way to build it efficiently enough that we can keep the cost down, so that we can keep the price down for you. This machine is not quite available yet. It is in process, so we are pre-selling it. We are at this $119,000 price tag. Which is really too low for the cost of this machine for us. We're selling 10 units at that price, pre-selling, with a $500 deposit on a credit card on the website. So kind of a minimal commitment, and it's actually even refundable. But that gets your place in line, that reserves your machine on the production line. But there's going to be some time, so we're already starting to pre-sell these units. Q1, really in the first half of Q1 2022, production will start on our production line for this iDRY Mini, this Turbo Mini, and then definitely by Q2, we have the first units rolling off the line. And so if you order one today, the earliest you'll probably see it is, say, middle to end of March, April 1st, maybe. And then everybody, next, it'll just be first come, first served after that, but we'll pump them out, 1 or 2 a week probably after that. So that's the Mini, a little bit more obtainable plate dryer for the folks that want to dry really seriously flat lumber really fast. But then I'm not sure who in this audience today is in this category, but another fairly new product for us this year is the Idre Turbo Pro, which is the biggest vacuum kiln we've ever built. And it is also a plate dryer, has the bladder press and so on. It is similar to machines we've built a lot of in the past for some of the biggest furniture cabinet flooring companies, but even bigger. And we have the first few rolling off the line right now. This technology is the same as the other two turbos of the plates and so on, but just huge. And because the plates are so big, 27 feet by almost 8 feet wide, they weigh 600 pounds. Nobody handles these plates by hand. Whereas the other two machines, the Mini, the plates are actually light enough that somebody can slide the plates and manipulate them by hand. The middle-sized Turbo, we do actually sell a really simple little jib crane to handle the plates, actually very easy. And then but with this Turbo Pro, not only are we handling a lot of plates that are heavy, we're handling a lot of lumber. 15,000 board feet is the maximum lumber that fits in this machine. So we have a vacuum stacker, which is essentially a gantry robot, which we've done a lot of projects using this. Comes from a company that we've done a lot of business with, another supplier, but they built a custom stacker for us, and it is amazing. So we're able to, with 7 or 8 of these machines in a facility, you can put out 1.3 million board feet a year per machine. So call it, you're approaching 10 million board feet a year with 7, 8 machines. And you can operate this whole facility with 1 or 2 people, and those people can stack the lumber, unstack the lumber, load the kiln, unload the kiln, and operate the kiln. So it's an extremely automated and easy to operate facility, but has all these quality benefits and these extreme throughput speed benefits. This is where we're going to see more and more of the larger, especially wood products, furniture kind of folks going in the future, especially as furniture, thank God, starts to come back to the US for manufacturing. So expensive. I mean, we're talking about, just to give you an example, a typical installation is no less than 2 kilns plus all this material handling equipment. You're looking at a $2.5–3 million project for just our equipment plus some building facility and so on. So these are multi-million-dollar installations, but actually the payback on them generally is less than a year because of the throughput and quality benefits and yield benefits. So pretty amazing stuff. Some of the companies that you might recognize, we have hundreds, so I didn't know who to put on this page really, but sold a bunch of kilns recently to Bassett Furniture. They've been fantastic to deal with. They're one of the largest furniture companies in the country, and they've talked about keeping furniture manufacturing in the US. They have pioneered that idea from the beginning. They never went to China. They never allowed that to happen. So hats off to them, but they're really starting to catch on. Some of these other sawmill and furniture companies, foreign guys. I have a YouTube video I was going to show here. Let's see how this works. Can everybody see my screen? I think you can.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Once
If
this
you
guy
can't see it,
gets
just
off the
raise your hand.
treadmill.
But
Yeah.
are you trying to tell us something? Or
Let's skip the Nordic track. That's not part of sales pitch tonight. So this is going to show the stack or the stacking operation. So this could be adapted to the smaller turbos as well, but is really necessary for the larger turbos. This kiln right here is actually a medium size, but this is a transverse trolley moving lumber, wirelessly controlled thing that moves this 140,000 pound pile of wood and heating plates to and from the stacking operation. And then it goes, so it comes out of the kiln dry, goes under the stacker. We take all those aluminum plates off, put them onto a stack with green lumber. And so this is all happening without anybody touching anything. These guys are just monitoring, but this machine is doing it itself. It's grabbing a stack of dry, looks like poplar, 4/4, probably for a cabinet business, down piling it onto dry stacks, then grabbing a aluminum plate, heating plate, putting that on the green pile, then grabbing green lumber. And basically we're shuffling the deck. We're taking the dry pack and down piling it, up piling the green pack, and the whole operation is automated and takes about an hour, hour and a half without any labor. So our kilns are generally, if you're 7 or 8 of these kilns, you're turning probably 2 kilns a day, every single day. If you're drying, say, mostly 4/4. And so it's actually, and you typically have an extra set of heating plates and an extra trolley. So you're building 3 stacks of lumber and downpiling 3 stacks of lumber every day. And it's actually not a lot of work. And what you'll generally find if you visit one of our customers, you'll walk into a building like this with 7 or 8 kilns and you don't even find anybody there because they've already loaded all the kilns. They're all drying lumber. They have their extra load of lumber and plates built up with green lumber ready to go. And later in the day, when kiln number 2 is done, they'll open the door, pull the load out, move the green lumber down, push it in, plug in these plates, close the door and press start, and then go to work downpiling that load. So a good operation is always ahead of it. What's kind of funny, if you look closely at this, you see the lumber, not only is lumber seriously flat, but it's even a little bit shiny because we've pressed it with so much force that we're not changing the shape of the wood. It's not quite that much force, but we are pressing it with so much force that the surface of the high spots on the board are actually smooth. And it's just a really incredible process. So I'll get back into here. So get into a little bit of the business side of things. We do now have a lease program, which is really not for everybody. It's primarily for new businesses that have an established business credit. But this is a internal program. So it's a true lease, like a car lease or a rental where you don't own the equipment. We do. We actually have a promotion for this right now where there's no deposit needed. So there's some real savings there, but generally a lease, although really easy to get, has some real benefits in being able to expense the equipment and so on, is the more expensive way to ultimately purchase the machine. But it makes our equipment more accessible to more people. So that's kind of a new program that we have out there, and a little bit of a promotion for some qualifying people. That's good until the end of next month. One thing I did want to raise, which I do every year, usually much later in the year, but because we're so busy, I want to bring everybody's attention to the fact that if you want to buy any capital equipment, but ours included, and if you can buy it and pay for it and put it into service by the IRS's term before the end of this year, you can you need to talk to your CPA and your accountant, but you should be able to fully depreciate the value of that equipment against your income this year, which if you have income this year, and a lot of our customers are doing great, so I assume they do, and you were going to pay tax on that income, then reducing that income by the price tag of our kiln reduces your income and therefore your tax, which if you pay the national average of about 25% of your income, can be a 25% savings on the kiln, which is enormous. So something that a lot of people overlook, unfortunately, maybe their CPA doesn't bring it to their attention, but if you're looking at buying any equipment, especially ours, you want to get your order in soon because we're already almost sold out for the year. Our lead time's out quite a ways. We have 100 kilns in our backlog right now, and it's just busy all the time. So I just don't want people to wait till December 15th and tell us, I want to buy a kiln because my accountant tells me I'm making too much money this year and I need something to depreciate. We need to get those orders in and our deposits and into production soon. And I think I say here we can only build, in fact, that's gone down just since I wrote that yesterday. We can only build 10 more standards and 8 more pluses. It's maybe now 7 more pluses before the end of the year. So something I get a lot of frustrated phone calls about November, December, people wanting to rush to get a kiln because they're going to pay tax. And this usually November, December is fine, but this year it's just not. We're super busy. So we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, we actually already have one from Jeff Nagel. Yeah, he was asking what type of pricing structure works well in the service.
So on our website, there's a little calculator, first of all, that you could use, Jeff, to play with this. But I think I've heard a lot of ideas, and one of my customers said this to me years ago, that he uses certain cents per board foot per day. So we actually dry wood for people here as well as building the kilns, and we charge 10 cents per board foot per day. And the reason I think that is fair, and everybody I've dried for, and I think my customers have dried for, seems to wrap their head around this as being fair, because you're paying for the volume of wood and for how long it's going to tie up the guy's kiln. And so if you want to give me some 8x12 mantelpiece that you want really dry, then it's going to take me a really long time relatively in my kiln. I could have dried 8 loads of 4/4 in the same amount of time. So if I'm going to tie up my kiln for a long time for this giant chunk of wood, I'm going to have more energy, it's space in my kiln, so I'm going to charge you more. So that's the per day piece. And then obviously, if you give me 1 board or a full kiln charge, you should pay on that. Other people have done a fixed per board foot price, $1 board foot or something like that, which $1 board foot sounds really expensive to some people, but when you're turning hardwood around as fast as we do with as good a quality, it's a good deal. But you have to be careful, because again, comes along the guy with the big 12x8 thing that wants to type your kiln forever, and you only charge him $1 a board foot, and he's brought you all of 18 board feet. So it's up to you, Jeff, and you should test your market. If you're thinking about buying a kiln, or you already have one, you want to put it into service for drying for other people, ask, talk to local sawmills or furniture shops and tell them what you're thinking and listen to their feedback. But I can tell you, I have customers that charge as much as 25 cents per board foot per day. So if you're drying a slab for somebody, it could be $4 or $5 a board foot just for the drying service. But it's better than waiting 3 years to get that slab dry another way, and maybe it's not even dried properly. So hopefully that answers it.
And then looks like we have. Okay, if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box, or you can drop it in the chat and we'll go ahead and get those answered. You can also ask, there's a button that should ask for permission to talk. If you hit that, I can go ahead and unmute you so you can ask it if that's easier for you to, instead of writing it down. Hey, John, yeah, we're going to send a recording out. We'll send out a replay link and we'll have this on the YouTube channel, probably at the latest Monday, but probably tomorrow.
There's past webinars too out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
If you guys go to YouTube and search iDRY wood, right? Or iDRY kilns or something.
Yeah, and you could go to the website even, and there's a link right to YouTube there. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, there's some other really interesting webinars, and I just did one with a customer, Matt Rubin, interviewing him about his sawmill business, which actually was a lot more to do with him and less to do with us, which I like and fascinating.
Nah, John asked if you have any connections for a new mill right now. Wait times are crazy.
Oh my God, John, it is crazy. I don't. I have the inside track as much as I think you could, and all I can tell you is it's not easy for them right now. It's mostly for a huge increase in demand, just like for our products, but some serious supply chain problems for these poor sawmill manufacturers trying to get pumps and motors and parts and steel, and I can relate. It's hard.
And Vincent's asking, he said they mostly dry 8, 10, and 12/4 material with our iDRY standard. They're looking to expand to a new kiln. They do mostly live edge, so would a plus or a turbo mini be better?
That is a good question. I almost always lean towards the plus because I hate having to restack slabs. I'd rather get my work out another way. So I would probably do a plus because you're gonna sticker this pile of slabs off the mill anyway, and it's probably going to be waiting on the kiln, so it should be stickered and letting it air dry a bit while it's waiting. And it's just a lot of work to pull those slabs off stickers and put them on plates and then do it again, take them off plates. That being said, I have a few customers that would totally disagree with me, and I have been adamant about how the plate dryer is too much work for slabs, but they swear by it. They dries the slabs twice as fast and flatter. I mean, even flatter. The plus and the standard do a pretty darn good job, I think, of drying slabs as flat as they can be, but you put 125,000 pounds down on the slab and it is flat. So tough to say, man. That's really hard. I think I would go plus.
You would go plus, you said?
Yeah. It also depends on your timing, right? We can deliver a plus before the end of the year now, but the turbo's you're not going to see that till late March, early April.
Good point.
So it's kind of up to your timing too.
And he also asked too, if going from green is better, or I'm sorry, going from green, is it better to have the plate dryer?
No, not necessarily. The plate dryer does really well from green with certain things like poplar, maple, birch ash, those species, but generally the same rules apply for each kiln. If anything, I think the standard and the plus being that it has airflow that picks up the moisture and does a bit of humidifying conditioning, you could say, during the process. I believe those two kilns get away with drying things more from green than the plate dryer does. So, but that being said, I'm a fan of air drying just as long as it's done well.
Great. And we have someone from South Jersey. Any idea of competition locally that you've sold to?
In South Jersey?
Yeah.
Go to the website and go to the Kilns services tab, and it doesn't have all of our customers there, but there's this map I showed on a slide before. And you can zoom in on South Jersey and see. I'm doing it myself right now for you, but there's not much. I actually don't see anything in South Jersey. Around Philly, there's a couple, but that Jersey, Delaware market is kind of underserved. There's definitely some around Philly, Baltimore, but even moving further, Lancaster, Allentown, closer to the woods. But yeah, not a lot of kilns in that area.
Do we have any other questions from anyone? And yeah, he said, don't tell anyone about that in Jersey.
I'll tell you what, everybody, if you put 30 kilns in South Jersey, they would eventually all be full of wood, and you'd be looking at putting more kilns in. The truth of the matter is, Wood-Mizer and others have been selling thousands of sawmills since the 80s. So they're already out there, and they're now busier than ever selling sawmills. So where's all this wood going to get dried? We can only put kilns out so fast, and we ship our kilns worldwide. So we're trying to cover the whole world, and we are probably never going to saturate the market. Just so you know, I'm certainly counting on it.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Trade secrets? I do agree. I'm sure used sawmills on Facebook are way overpriced right now.
Oh my God.
Can't even imagine.
I've had people think about buying iDRY kilns to resell them at a profit. And I've heard that about sawmills too.
I believe it.
Isn't that crazy? What a commodity.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought this just a few years ago. I just said, what is a sawmill? What is this?
Yeah.
But it is, yeah. It's pretty soon. I mean, that'll be what people are looking for. It's what they are looking for, is the products coming out.
Yeah, and the way the housing market is going, obviously it's been a roller coaster the last year or two, but the way the housing market's going, we've got houses being built for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those houses are going to want furniture, flooring, and molding, and cabinets. And so
I have friends building their home right now, and they have put it on hold because lumber, good lumber is so crazy right now.
2x4s are like gold. So that's the other thing, right? It's been busy, and builders are booked out for years to come. But a lot of bigger projects, especially, are put on hold, waiting for 2x4s to get cheaper and plywood and so on. So it's just delaying that market, and we're going to be scrambling to saw enough hardwood and dry it and make it into stuff for a lot of years. It's great, but it is a mess of the supply chain right now.
Does anyone else have any questions, feedback?
Yeah, and if anybody does come up with anything later, like Jess said, this is going to be recorded, put on our YouTube channel. You can certainly call us, email us, chat with us on the website. However we can help.
Yeah, feel free to drop comments on the video, even, whatever's easiest for you.
We're looking at that. Yep.
We're here to respond.
Exactly.
Like I said, we'll be sending out a replay link. Thank you everyone for coming. I don't know, Jim, do you want to wait a few more minutes, make sure no one has any questions? We're good. It kind of seems like
yeah, it seems like everybody's good. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time. Been about an hour, so I hope I got done before you East Coasters are ready for dinner. So appreciate you taking the time out of your evening for us, and we're here to help.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night and a great almost weekend.
That's right. Take care.
Bye.